let's call the meeting to order. Let's do a pledge. Thank you all. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Okay. I have two notices of absence on the council today. George is excused for personal reasons, and Ren is also excused for family reasons. I see the rest of the council, Molly, Justice, Paloma, Dan, and myself are here. I see the city administrator. Is there one of our attorneys on the call?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Nick Ward-Willis.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
Good evening. Thank you.
The first thing we've got is a community segment. It's going to be the presentation of our capital program. I just want to note before I hand it off to Chris and Susan, there you are, Tucker, our finance director, that the way this works is the council approves an annual budget in the fall. And what we do in the spring is we do a 5-year look, which is our capital program. And the first year, and capital expenses are those things that are long-lived. So the smallest thing that's a capital item is a car. We can debate whether a car should be in the capital plan or just in the ongoing budget. It's in the capital plan usually. But it also goes to all the bigger ones, and it helps us look forward to how we are spending our investment funds, the ones that last a long time. It also gives you a sense of how we're managing our budget with respect to debt service, which is what we pay for the bonding that we do. So tonight's capital program, Chris is going to present it. It's probably one of the larger ones that we've done in a while. The primary reason that it is up where it is in the capital program is that we're undertaking the build of the fire station across the street. That's, I believe, the biggest program that we've ever done. It helps to have inflation, but it is in excess of $10 million, be closer to 13 or 14, and we'll take you through it. The excess of that is going to be covered in this capital program. We're going to pick it up out of general fund balance, which is basically excess that we've got that we bank for rainy days. Sort of like your checking or your savings account. And we've been accruing there because Susan does a spectacular job of managing our finances. It helps that we have got a new sales tax revenue that's adding an additional $1 million to our budget, and it gives us some running room here. So I think we've got the ability to do this. We've taken our time. It's almost 20 years of planning to work the firehouse, but I think we're all lined up both in terms of what we're going to do, and it's at a manageable level, and how we're going to fund it, because we've been getting ready for that for some time. So I just wanted to introduce those items, and then I'll turn it over to Chris, all right?
So I'm going to present the 5-year capital program. Susan's going to jump in at various points. As you know, with the annual budget, we have 3 major funds: the general fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund. So the capital program, the 2024-28 capital program that's in your packet, it's also on our website, is broken down by fund. I'm going to just give a brief overview, and then I'll take any questions you have, but you can also jump in with any questions. This year's capital program for 2024 is about $7.66 million. So again, in a 5-year capital plan, really what we're locking down is the 2024 number. The other numbers are out in the further years, and they're kind of placeholders. We do, as Susan will talk about, as we push things back, we do escalate the cost to make sure that we have enough money for those items. This year, what we've done, though, is try to bring you a fairly lean capital program, because the firehouse project that is going to a vote tonight for the 7 contracts for the primes is probably the largest project we've done here in a generation, and we're necessarily being cautious with money at this point. So in the general fund, you'll see we're proposing in 2024 to spend an additional $5,664,700. Most of that is constituted by the increase in the price for the fire station. So we've added $4 million above what you bonded previously last year. There are a few incidental vehicles that you'll see we included, like we're pretty hard on police vehicles, and if we don't do a couple a year, we end up getting behind. We have one truck that's desperately needed to replace a almost 20-year-old truck at DPW. You'll see that we have included milling and paving each year. So there's a number of items that aren't bonded but come back to us in funds that we receive from the state or other sources. So the $500,000 that we've lined up for milling and paving each year, that's covered by CHIPS funding, which is state funding through the Consolidated Local Street and Highway Improvement Program. We've also added $500,000 for sidewalks that you'll see, and they're partially offset by our community development block grant. We're looking to do two projects that we would queue up as quickly as we could and probably implement this year. One is for South Avenue. Last year we did the side on our park. This year we'll do the west side along South Davies Avenue. And then there's a Main Street project to redo the sidewalks where trees have buckled the sidewalks at 5 or 6 locations on the east end of Main Street. So we would look to do that possibly late this fall, early next year, and it would basically be taking out the trees, resetting the sidewalks, and then planting as mature a tree as we can get in there to try to replace the canopy that we're going to be losing there. And as you know, I don't like to take down any trees, so I resisted this for a while. In addition to the milling and paving, we do have some extra money put into our recreation investments. We have been planning to redo the We Play section of Memorial Park. That at first was just going to be a resurfacing, but because the resurfacing was so large in scope, we basically decided just to do the whole thing over. So new fencing, new play elements, new surfacing, and then we needed some extra money to also address another project. And Sue, help me remember what that is. Oh, the repaving of the courts at South Avenue Park. So our tennis courts, our basketball courts are in need of some upgrades. The fencing needs to be replaced. We did previously allocate $80,000 for a retaining wall. We've gone back and engineered that so that we don't need a wall, but we can actually make a nicer slope. So we're going to do some upgrades at both of those parks. In the water fund, we don't have much this year. We're proposing to do one generator, which is necessary for pumping water into the Helen Court area where you have to go uphill and we don't have enough pressure there. In the water fund, in the sewer fund, we have allocated money for the Fishkill Avenue sewer replacement. You'll remember some weeks ago we brought to you bids to reject for the Fishkill Teller Avenue project. That project was well above the budget. And what I said is we'll bring back a smaller project to approve for the DOT part, but we're going to finish out the rest of it. So this takes it to the next level. Where we end the project at Memorial Park, there's sewer replacement to be done on the Fishkill side of that. So this will address that. And then we have confirmed with the New York State DOT that our state touring route money can be used to mill and pave the rest of that roadway. So again, we won't do it all in one project, but we're committed to trying to get that whole roadway fixed so that we don't leave pieces of it looking degraded. Sue, anything I'm missing up to this point? I would just say the sewer fund also includes extra money for two projects that we've finished the design and are waiting for approvals on, the West Main Pump Station and the West Main Force Main. These are critical parts of our wastewater collection system, and we've added $600,000 for that. And then we have another Monell pump station, and there's money in for engineering. Now, some of you may be wondering where some of the projects you approved previously are, and I'd like to just give you a quick rundown, because when you've approved them in the past, we're still actually working on some of them. So some years ago, you approved money to repair both the Mount Beacon and Pocket dams. You recall we were there for the opening of the Pocket. Mount Beacon is almost done and should be closed out very shortly. The Fishkill Avenue Hannah Lane sewer was just finished. We repaved last week, and we restriped over the weekend, so that project is going to be closed out. We have primary settling tanks down at the wastewater treatment plant. That was a major project. That's where some of our ARPA money went. That project got delayed due to supply chain issues, and we now have all of the supplies in, and we expect that project to be done by the fall. Melzinga Dam, we have finished all of the engineering for raising the spillway of that dam. That's another major project like the Mount Beacon Dam, and we're looking to bid that probably in late 2024 for a 2025 start. I mentioned the West Main pump station and the Forest Main. We had lined up money a couple years ago about that. Now with escalation and costs, we're adding, and we'll be ready to go out to bid in late this year or early next year, so that can begin in the spring. And then the other big project that's on the horizon is something that you bonded for, or you authorized a bond for last year, and it's an upgrade and a replacement of the city's dewatering system at the wastewater treatment plant. We currently use a very old belt press to separate the liquid from the solids. And we are looking to move, we have now confirmed that we would like to move to a dual centrifuge system. So we would have different technology that allows us both to get the solids drier and thus have less waste going to a landfill. And it also helps us operationally move from 2 shifts to 1 shift because it's more efficient in terms of production. And so that large project we are seeking grants for, that may go out next year depending on the outcome of the grant. So where we can, we are trying to get grants for the sewer pipe, for the dewatering system. We are applying for a FEMA grant for the Melzinga Dam, and they recently made that grant program more flexible so that dams actually were eligible. And then we have the firehouse project, and you have 8 votes tonight regarding that, that I'm looking forward to. And then, what did I miss, Sue?
I think
You didn't miss anything.
The
but-
South Avenue toilets at the basketball court?
Yes, so the South Avenue restrooms, we have done the survey work for. We're trying to figure where that location would be, and I'm asking Jonathan Jacobson, Assemblymember Jacobson's office for a grant on that. That would cover, what I'm hoping is we get enough of a grant to cover the courts and a modular bathroom being put in there.
There was water down there that we could connect to?
There's sewer, definitely.
okay.
We found the sewer pipe. There has to be water close to the street, so we will find that.
Okay, thanks.
And again, I think we could, I think we'll have enough to engineer and construct that. And if we don't, we have a little bit of flexibility
Okay.
with the recreation fund.
Great.
So a lot of the projects that Chris was mentioning were projects that were authorized in 2021's capital plan and 2022's capital plan. So it takes that long to get through some of these. When we were putting this plan together, we recognize how much the additional cost of the firehouse will be, but also the supply chain issues, the inflation increases, as well as the interest rate increases. So we were hoping to scale back a little bit on some of the other projects. We've shifted other projects, almost the entire capital plan out 1 year with a 5% escalation factor for each year. So to sort of put on hold some of the projects, we didn't put everything into 2024. So we tried to keep it lighter this year. Also, we haven't bonded or taken out any debt since June of 2021. So all the work that we've been doing, we've been fronting the money or funding it with fund balance.
And it's our hope in the general fund not to have to bond any of this. Most of it we can do through use of our fund balance, which is like our savings account, and then the grants that we're getting. For instance, all of the milling and paving, we get reimbursed for that from the state. And then we'll get back a sizable chunk of the sidewalk. We get $183,000 on that. And I think I made Susan round everything to 10,000.
So this is more of the conceptual plan for the next 5 years. Once we agree that this is what we would like to do for 2024, we'll bring forth a funding plan, how we plan on funding each of the projects.
Mm-hmm. You know, I for one would like to see the $500,000 for sidewalks stretch out into the out years. I think, you know, we've talked about.
Just
Go
sort
ahead.
of a blanket sidewalk to just.
Well, like we do with milling and paving.
A placeholder for each year. We could do that.
I'd like to do that. I think that, you know, I've been for a while asking to see if we can get sidewalk repair and new sidewalks on a regular schedule like we do with milling and paving, and repeatedly I've been told that this is the appropriate place to do that. So I think that if my colleagues agree, I'd like to see the 500,000 extend year over year.
I'd like to see that as well.
2025 out.
Yeah, I agree, that makes sense. If the capital budget is the place to put it, which I've been hearing the same thing, then exactly in line with the milling and paving schedule to make sure that we're continually investing in our sidewalks as well.
Yeah, and the out years, as you kind of heard, are just placeholders, right? They're not where we're actually authorizing. So that's an easy change. I've assumed the same thing for that particular
Right,
one.
and then we'll prioritize which areas, see if we could, it's a possibility for some funding.
Yeah.
And we know we're going to have additional work on Fishkill Avenue. I mean, we're truncating the DOT project that we have. It's only going from Walcott at the George Washington head to Main Street to Memorial Park, and we'd like to replace some of those sidewalks stretching further out towards Mill Street and Prospect.
Yeah, and traditionally,
And I had to pull those out of the project because we were almost $6 million over budget.
Yeah, traditionally, when I've seen this, it doesn't always have the items we're getting reimbursed on, so we're looking at a number that's mostly, our nut to figure out how to pay. I actually like including the items that, even though we think we will be reimbursed. I note that the, Route 52 is not in here, understandably, but, again, we're not allocating funds this year, so it's not a problem that it doesn't appear, right?
And the current funding plan always includes those items, like the milling and paving, so we
Right.
can see where we're applying the grant funds.
And probably for next year's capital plan, I'll have a better idea of both the timing and cost of repaving, doing that additional milling and paving. This is our baseline milling and paving that we do each year. We choose between 1 and 2 dozen streets. We try to get as much done. Mickey has kind of a neighborhood approach where he tries to finish. Yeah, and you'll see in the next few weeks a draft plan so that some of the areas where we've milled and paved, we're trying to finish out those areas, and then other key corridors. The Fishkill project is in addition to that, so I would do that with a different source of money after we get the sewer work completed.
Question about the pool restoration. What's envisioned here? Is this a straight replacement of the lining of the pool? Will it change? Will the dimensions of the pool change? What's planned?
This number was just doing a replacement of the fiberglass.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to change the dimensions, we'd actually have to move to the newer pools that are walk-in. They're ADA compliant, so they can't have the lip. So this just envisions a refiberglassing of the existing pool in the dimensions that are there.
That's the fiberglass lining of the.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, otherwise that number would be a lot more. And then we do have also, Mark has been interested in doing splash pads at various parks, because that's a way of having some kind of summer relief to the heat in other areas. And they're a lot less investment than building another pool. And you don't have to have lifeguards for them.
Chris, I saw that the Riverfront Park project, which I think came before the council several years ago, but that's kind of right now earmarked for 2025. Is that something that is likely to go ahead in 2025, or does it depend on MTA's plans for the lot, the other side of the tracks?
I think the latter. It depends on what MTA comes to us eventually. We've heard rumor that they want to do a request for expressions of interest, and then we heard that maybe the numbers don't work for them yet. If we don't have some indication that they're ready to move forward on something, I would do this in 2025. That park needs some attention, and again, I think we're only going to hold off so long on that.
Great, thank you.
This salt brine maker, did we not get one of those already? I feel like we talked about this
We talked
already.
about it. Mickey was here last year, and the idea of this was, rather than us having salt that's distributed from a truck, we would actually premix the salt with water and then spray it so that we use less salt. It's applied only to the roads and it doesn't spray out. There were a couple pieces of this that needed to happen. I know we have the brine mixer,
Okay.
and then we need a specialized truck top,
Okay.
the tank piece. And we, right now, don't have the room to even put the mixer in, because we have a trailer over at the DPW garage housing 2 of our firefighters while this facility is vacated.
Okay. So
But
we
yeah, that's
did
been-
have other components of this
Yes.
system in the, okay.
Yeah. Do you see that in the, Susan, last year's we did
No,
it?
last year was the asphalt hot box
Yes.
to redo the potholes.
But we
No.
did talk about the brine system, too.
We talked about
because-
it, but we didn't put it in 2023's.
Got it.
So,
Yeah, it was probably on the out years, and then we kicked it back another year.
right.
Was that for the bituminous concrete?
No, the bituminous concrete, actually. You've already approved that.
Okay.
But the asphalt mixer, we are starting to test. There's another type of it that we're trying to test. The idea of that is, rather than putting cold patches that just fall apart and then annoy everybody because they're little chunks of gravel, that we actually do a proper cut and then put old gravel in that's been heated up so that it stays better.
And we can reuse pavement.
Yes.
This way.
Yeah, and we have a lot of millings left.
So, Chris, we talked about the striping of the basketball court at Green Street. Would that precede this?
Yes.
Okay.
So we are trying to line that up. I don't know if I told you that yet. We'll talk
Oh.
about it. Mark and I
That
are,
means I have budget amendments coming.
Mark and
Sorry,
I are
Chris.
lining up about $14,000 to $15,000 of work to finish out Green Street. It's really the last major item that needs to be done, and I think we're going to do a budget amendment.
Okay. Sorry if I got you in trouble.
You did get me in trouble, thank you.
I had a
I
question.
was going to tell you eventually.
I just wanted, there are a number of different street cameras in the police department budget. Are those to replace existing street cameras?
For the most part, yes. There's one that was proposed as new, which I think is,
I think it's the 91.
So the one for this year?
yeah.
Mhm.
But the other ones, some of them are broken, but, again, they weren't super high priority. I even question why we have cameras in the capital program at all, because they are a smaller item in terms of value, and But they've always been in the capital program.
It's not necessarily value, it's useful life.
Yeah.
So they should have a life longer than 5 years. Like the vehicles are in here, we have them for 8 years. I typically am not bonding them. I'm using prior years retained fund balance for that.
Other questions?
I think you've said this in the past, Chris, that the West Main pump station in Forest Main, is that primarily because Edgewater's coming online? Is that why we need to replace that, or are there other reasons why it has to be worked
That's a
done on it?
contributing reason, yeah. It needed to be done, but we needed that extra capacity to handle Edgewater.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. And we're waiting on an approval from Metro North, because that's actually on their property. So we've fully engineered that project. It's received Department of Health sign-off. We think we'll have Metro North sign-off in the next couple months, and then we're going to try to have the bid out like in January or February, so it can go early spring.
Great.
We all good?
And just next steps on this, so we will need to, I thought we'd bring it to a workshop because you've just had this for a brief amount of time. If you have questions, please email me. If you want any of the department heads to come and talk about details that I might not have gotten, we can certainly make them available to you. We weren't going to do as much as last year because we basically pushed off the capital program about a year. We'll be noticing in the paper that there'll be a public hearing, so we'll ask you at your June 12th meeting to set a public hearing. A copy of this will be available to the public, and then the only thing our code says is that we are to adopt this by the end of July. So we have time to work on it, and we can make the amendment that you proposed about the sidewalks. And then you'll be bringing a finance plan probably for the next workshop, right? On
Yes.
June 5th?
June 5th?
Yeah. So we'll actually show you the details that we talked about. You know, the sidewalks, we expect an offset of $180,000, the milling, $500,000. For the recreation, we have money that's coming out of the recreation fund that developers pay.
All right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Did anybody find the information about Grievance Day?
Oh, I did look on the website, and it said 2 to 4 and 6 to 8.
Yes.
On Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay. And letters already went out?
Letters
Yes.
went out.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's the community segment. Again, we'll pick it up in workshop, and then we'll do the necessary public hearing and move forward on that. The next item is public comment. So this is an opportunity for anyone in the public to make a comment of up to 3 minutes on any topic, unless it is a comment about a public hearing. We will have one public hearing today on stop signs and parking. So if you'd like to make a comment on that, just hold off, and then this is the open portion of public comment. In terms of who's signed up, Teresa Kraft, you're on the list, and then after that, I'll take anyone else.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thanks, Sue.
I urge the council to consider and implement a building moratorium and get back to protecting our historic buildings and view sheds. The Prophecy Theater project is still dragging out before the city's planning board. It may have been a great proposal before the build-outs of the apartments complexes on either side, but not as the busy area that it sits today. Even the city planner stated on record it's a great repurpose of a historic building, but it's in the wrong location. For the past 18 months, huge numbers of local residents have come out to numerous public hearings objecting to the project, but the planning board keeps sending the developer and its team back for changes. How long will this drag on, and can the council step in? Later on tonight's agenda, you have a public hearing discussing adding more stop signs in other sections of Beacon. However, I think the stop signs already throughout the city must be addressed in a larger conversation. Most people are rolling right through them without making a full stop. I would like to see more enforcement of traffic infringements daily, the speeding, U-turns, illegally parked cars, etc. Perhaps the city needs a traffic patrol besides the overworked police force. Our Main Street has become a zoo, and it's not even the beginning of the summer yet. The speeding at the intersection of Main, Tyranda, and Churchill is a disaster waiting to happen. I know we can't fix stupid, but you can slap them with a ticket and wake them up while adding monies to the city's money stream. It's been 2 years and counting waiting for crosswalk signs to go up near the intersection. 3 out of 4 of the signs are missing. I would also like to know about the status of the Groveville Bridge, as it appears they have moved aside the massive Jersey barriers, and it's become a passageway for motorcycles, and today passing it, it appeared to me that a small white car was exiting it. I'm sure every neighbor can relate to a similar experience. Liberty Street traffic continues to be a speeding nightmare at any hour. It is really the Major Deegan Expressway. Fix it.
Thank you.
Mayor, may I make a quick clarification? Bridge Street Bridge was permitted for filming, and that's why that was moved, and it's going to be fixed in the next day or two.
Yep, I assume you would say that in your comments, so either way is fine. Anyone else in the public like to make a comment? Just come up one at a time. Let us know who you are and where you live.
Mike Pantliano, 38 St. Luke's Place. I'm here today to urge the council to look at 20 Water Street. The building is dilapidated, it's abandoned, it's unsafe. Under the building code, chapter 91, the building should be considered unsafe. The second floor is buckled downwards, and the building is buckling inward and falling in on itself. It creates a hazard to the community. The building was built according to records 1900, so there's likely asbestos in there. There is a natural spring that discharges onto that property, so there's a drainage issue on waters because of that. In the summer, spring, fall, the road is always wet. In the winter, it becomes a block of ice, not a sheet of ice, a block of ice. Because of these reasons, I think the city needs to take a closer look at this and follow through with Chapter 91 of the building code and act accordingly. If anybody wants to meet me to look at this building, I am available on Thursday. Dan has my contact information. I'd be more than happy to walk the property with you, at least the sidewalk along the property, to take a look at the building and demonstrate my concerns and what I'm observing. It is a small lot. There is a natural stream that discharges. It'd be great if the city could take that property at some point and reuse it, possibly as a pocket park or something, because there is a surface water body there that's discharging right there. It would make a really nice little pocket park. And I think that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Would you remind me the street address again?
It's 20 Water Street.
Great.
It's right behind the old firehouse that's on East Main, and I think 2, maybe 3 buildings just down the road from Dogwood.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Should I say my name?
Yeah.
I'm David Murphy. I live across the street from 20 Water Street. Mike and I came together. So the entire time I've lived there, the building's been dilapidated and hasn't been maintained. And we were just assuming that it would get torn down by now, but it's really fallen apart to the point where it looks completely unrepairable. My concern, having watched 14 Water Street try to mitigate the drainage problems from Fountain Square, there's a natural spring that runs through it. If you walk along Water Street, you can hear the creek or the natural spring running underneath the street. My concern is that because 14 Water Street mitigated the water by putting up a retaining wall and running drainage, that's the reason for the spillover into the street. Because of that, if another developer came in, if the building was torn down, another developer came in and tried to mitigate the drainage, it could be a serious problem unless there was some kind of, I don't know, investigation to how the water's running through there. I mean, I suppose it'd be fine if another house was built there, but I think myself and a lot of our neighbors would love to see a park or a community garden or something like that, considering the natural spring.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Clark Edmond, 2 Wilson Street. Tomorrow morning, the Dutchess County agency responsible for facilitating in some measure the tax abatements for Mirabeau and Tompkins will be meeting, and it's a very, very dangerous circumstance where $116 million is being deferred in property value taxation for up to 40 years. And in the bones of the process, we have tax abatements of $221,000 per unit at Tompkins. And that's not just the beneficiary units, assuming that everyone's a beneficiary of the proper income limits. But when you take that benefit of $500 a month and add it to Section 8 prices, you all of a sudden get into the federal programs where home ownership is an option. You didn't do your job. You didn't understand exactly the way it came down, and tomorrow it will be granted. And speaking of not doing your job, look at Mirabeau. In the end, first of all, you don't have any labor agreements in terms of its construction or management. Second of all, you have a bifurcation of interest in future planning that seems to guarantee that there'll always be the opportunity for new kinds of structures and extended stay and all the other kind of things, all tax benefit. And when you break it down, it's basically malfeasance. Nothing could be more demonstrative of the malfeasance than what's occurring with the firehouse tonight. I respect the need. I respect your skills. I respect the need that you should have a quality workplace as soon as possible. But here you have an architect with the knowledge of fire who wants to suppress his list of equipment needed. I don't know where it is. It isn't in the totals. You have a mayor that says, about 13 million, maybe 14. No, it's 14.6, 40% over the bonding that's been prior approved. You have a construction manager who's hired a construction manager, each of them taking traditionally 25, 15%, whatever the case may be, on top of each other, instead of bidding out the project, instead of bidding out the windows, the doors, and all the different ancillary things. The last time I built a $10 million project, I had 70 different contractors when I managed a contract. And that was a third of a century ago.
Your time is elapsed.
You've been ripped off. I refuse to yield the chair. Arrest me. I'm going to finish what I'm saying.
Clark.
I'm going to finish what I'm saying. And call a police officer and arrest me, because you're ripping off the taxpayers of this city. And I'm asking for 2 more minutes.
No.
Okay, there was a time before you took office, Lee, that we spoke for 5 minutes.
So
And-
Clark, come on, Clark.
Lee, I'm serious.
I don't want to have to call.
I'm serious as a heart attack.
I don't want to have to call someone, Clark. Come on.
Lee, this is you are facilitating the major ripoff of the citizens of this city.
I am largely facilitating your opportunity for public comment, which has ended, and I believe you should.
3 minutes is far too short when you're talking about the largest construction program this city has had.
Comments in writing, you can send them to us, you can post them.
I'll put them in
Next
writing,
time
all right,
you can
for the
use next
judge.
3 minutes. All right, so, thank you. Someone else like to make a comment? Thank you.
Thank you.
Of
Good
course.
evening.
Tell us who you are, where you live, and come
My
right
name
at
is
it.
Gamble Stemfley. I live at 10 Herbert Street.
Thank you.
My comment is in regard to the short-term rental law. It's disappointing to me that with so many options for effective and fair regulation available, the council has opted for the strictest they can implement, short of a total ban on STRs, To be clear, short-term rental permits in Beacon are only granted full-time property owners or tenants with landlord permission who are willing to invite short-term guests into their own personal living spaces, share an entrance, a kitchen, a bathroom. The stated rationale is that the council wants to, quote, preserve housing stock for long-term residents of Beacon. So anything which can conceivably be rented on a long-term basis must be, if any supplemental income is needed. Leaving aside questions of whether enforcement has been effective so far, the theoretical win here is that the city has banned non-owner occupied STRs in Beacon. I support and congratulate you on this effort, but I must also illustrate several problems with this one-size-fits-all solution. For example, this law makes no distinction between those non-resident investors and those full-time residents of Beacon, such as myself, whose properties are equipped with an ADU or an accessory apartment. The law bans STRs outright in either case, suggesting thereby that both owner categories are equally dangerous to the housing situation in Beacon, which is demonstrably false. Those non-resident investors can now just pack up and find a different city with different laws, but full-time residents of Beacon are full-time residents who have chosen to make a life here. I'm here to tell you that I resent being dumped into the same basket as any non-resident real estate investor. When I was given permission to build my mother an accessory apartment on my property, I also agreed that I would always have to reside in one of the two dwelling units and that I could never rent out both simultaneously to different tenants. I accepted this limitation as part of the deal because it also came with unique benefits. The plan was to make a nice elder apartment for my mother and to use it as a flex space before and after her time there, which is what distinguishes these from typical two-family homes. Historically, homeowners have used ADUs as separate living spaces for extended family, home offices, studios, guest houses, or rental units. The adaptable nature of ADUs allows homeowners to adjust their usage over time based on changing needs. Not in Beacon, though, not anymore. While we were given the impression during the negotiations with the planning board that this dwelling unit was going to be a legal STR, sometime during the
15 seconds.
During the intervening year, while we were building it, the council took a harder line and eliminated that possibility. I believe the council have made a mistake and as has been suggested, are going after the wrong people. The consequences of this law are harmful to the group of long-term Beacon residents I represent. I urge you to reconsider your perception that me using my ADU only for LTRs, which was already my right, is balanced consolation for what you have taken away.
Thank you for your input, and I appreciate you trying to respect the time. Thanks. Anyone else in the public audience want to make a remark? Okay. Ben, anyone on the virtual audience?
If you're on Zoom and you'd like to make a comment, please use the raise hand option at the bottom of your screen. If you're on phone, you can join by pressing *9, and you will need to press *6 to unmute once called upon. If you're joining us by YouTube, you will need to join the Zoom instead by visiting beaconny.gov. As of now, we do have one hand raised, and that is for Brett Miller.
Okay.
Mr. Miller, would you like to speak?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yep.
We can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you for the time. I'm sorry, I'm driving. I wish I could be there. I appreciate the council for all your service. In case the phone cuts out, I did send an email to Bren and Paloma just expressing my concerns. There's 2 points that I wanted to bring up today. By the way, I'm in Ward 3. 2 points I wanted to bring up today. Just one on the citywide assessments. I can't help but notice that it seems that anybody that purchased a home prior to annual reassessments has got a favor. Because, like, for instance, I purchased 3 years ago. I've gone up 34%, but on a percent basis, you know, my home is now at such a premium compared to, like, the neighbor that has 1.6 acres down the street and 2 homes. Also, my neighbor next door, and I noticed that it could be a systematic error because there's no real grievance process to do anything but contest your own property being overassessed. But for instance, like I think it was the last 5 years we've had annual reassessments, but before that there hadn't been a reassessment for 10 years. So, you know, what I'm seeing across these assessed values is that somebody's home is just going up a, you know, carte blanche 10% increase, but a much lower number because they didn't have annual reassessments for a decade before they did. And so I would urge the city council to take a look into this issue. You know, if it's a thing where we're trying to provide a favoritism and, you know, maybe an effective subsidy so that we're not forcing people out of Beacon, I mean, I can understand that, but if that's the intention, perhaps it needs to be done in a way other than what it's being done right now with the assessed values. And I would hope that, you know, I would get the same favor in the future, but with annual reassessments, I'll never get it, and it'll be a forever subsidy for people who didn't have an assessment for 10 years prior to annual assessments. Secondly, on the firehouse capital, I would just like to note and urge council to look at the root cause of fires. There's a lot of residents in Beacon that are on oil and propane, and I would imagine if you take a look at the fires, that's probably the source, the root cause of many fires. And I would think that we should, before we raise funding, either through bonding and indebting the city or
15
taking
seconds.
taxpayer money, that we look at addressing the root cause and perhaps taking a look at NYSERDA grants and other grants available to get people on heat pumps and electrifying their homes and mitigating the threat of fire rather than spending money on an addition, which really doesn't approach the root cause of fires. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I will, in my mayor's comments, talk about assessment.
Thank you.
Yep. Ben, I think you said that was the only one?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let's go on. The next part is a public hearing, and so I'll take a motion in a second to open a public hearing regarding stop signs and parking restrictions, and once open, I'll have Ben explain what they are.
Motion to open a public hearing on parking restriction, stop signs and
Parking restrictions.
parking restrictions, thank you.
Second. So that was Justice and Dan. And so, Ben, will you take us through what the proposed changes are that we're going to talk about at the hearing?
Sure. Did you want to do the vote first, quick?
You got to vote.
Open it.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Sorry. All right, now will you tell us what the subject of the public hearing is?
Absolutely. I won't belabor what we've talked about the past 2 weeks with this. Just a quick refresher, though, for everyone joining us. We have two proposed additions to the city code, or modifications. The first is making the intersection of South Walnut and DeWint into a four-way stop rather than a two-way stop as it is today. And the second one is to extend the no parking zone for any hours along the north edge of East Main Street a little further than it is as current. The blue would be the new area, the yellow is what exists currently. And both of these came through the Traffic Safety Committee. They were reviewed and recommended. We brought them to a workshop a couple weeks back and then set the public hearing a couple weeks back as well. And that's all I have for you.
Okay, with that, I will open the public hearing. If anyone would like to make a comment on these proposed changes, this is the opportunity to do so. And I've got one name on the list. It's Teresa Kraft.
I'm okay with adding the stop signs at these locations, but up on East Main Street, up at the top, Pocket Road, I would just look at how you're going to place these signs. I feel like people drive past it, and you don't realize that there's parking on the one side of the road as it is now. It's almost like the woodsy out there, and I don't know that if a traditional signage would work, but a little more detail for the people that, because you have to pass it before you can come back and see the sign on the opposite side. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else on this one? Again, topic is stop signs on East Main.
Yeah, no, the topic is also Pocket.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Clark Edmond, 2 Wilson. So The pocket raises an interesting opportunity to discuss the beginning of the pocket. And not far from the beginning of the pocket lies the reservoir.
Okay, that must have something to do with.
Yes, it has, exactly, Mayor. I'm sorry, you're taking my time, so let me just express my opinion without commentary, please. And so the question is about parking and about options for parking. So let's dig into that, okay? The elimination of parking and access to that part of the mountain and the public lands that are on the mountain, when we talk about removing parking from the immediate location at the beginning of the pocket, which is currently probably somewhat closed, whereas there may or may not be an opportunity to supplement and replace that parking on the street, and the camper, or the hikers that might prefer to access that portion of the mountain, the public lands that are there, raises the question as to supplementing the parking on the pocket and whether or not there's any additional opportunities beyond the formal pocket at the fence 200 feet distant from the reservoir, picking a rough estimate. One of the dilemmas would be, though, the bridge that would need to be constructed on the waterway that was converted that never existed until a quarter of the mountain was redirected, incidentally, onto my land without easement. Now, I am talking about parking, sir, and you can respect me.
Clark, come back. Clark, come back to here.
Okay?
Go ahead.
And so the issue becomes whether or not the city has a responsibility to replace a bridge to provide parking on the other side of the entrance to the public lands, and whether or not the bridge could be constructed with public lands when in fact the water was diverted illegally onto my land as well as all other lower lands.
Mayor, really?
This is representative of a way of managing the city.
It's telling you are really off.
Excuse me.
I'm not going to sit through this meeting.
Well, then you can sit in front of a federal judge.
Well, maybe I can have the cops come up, because you don't seem to
Oh, so my hands
understand.
time now. Now we're talking about speech.
Oh, we're talking about speech.
Okay.
So, does the
Mayor,
city
impose
attorney, does the city attorney have a comment to make?
I do, thank you, Mayor. Mayor, as the
You-
chairman of this meeting, you have the authority to determine what is within the bounds of this. This is a public hearing on whether or not there should be stop signs or whether there should be extension of no parking areas. This has nothing to do with the individual's repeated claims about actions the city may or may not have taken regarding LeBrook. He's clearly off target of the subject and focus of this public hearing, and that should not be permitted. He should stay focused as you have previously directed the speaker.
Well,
So
I've been
just hang on a
interrupted.
second, okay? So Clark, stick to the stop signs. You were doing fine when you talked about additional parking. I'm not taking up your time. You'll still have some more, okay?
Well,
But once you go,
precise-
once you go across the line and start talking about bridge and land somewhere else, I think the city attorney is raising a legitimate point. So if you want to make a comment about whether we should put up the signs on East Main and on Pocket, please finish that comment.
You are just begging to appear in front of a federal judge.
I'm okay
Mayor,
with that.
enough.
I'm okay with that.
Okay,
So,
no problem,
all
good.
right?
So we'll return to the subject as to why it's such a sore subject with the city fathers and why the management of this council is facilitating bad decisions and the sleepy community of Beacon has permitted you to do so. And, well, how juvenile.
You can come back when you're
How
done.
juvenile.
So, again, you need to connect it to parking. all
I
right?
am, Mayor. It's real simple, okay? If there is to be parking to accommodate the hikers, and the land is readily available readily available and readily fensible to provide for a parking lot without land acquisition cost, and the only issue is, really, is it brings up the issue as to the nature of the land, its water, its geography, and the
Mayor, this has nothing
necessity.
to do with whether an area should be restricted from parking. He's now talking about providing off-site parking.
I'm talking about
Completely off topic.
alternatives
Okay.
under environmental assessment
Just finish
for,
it, clerk, come on. All
are
right?
you ordering me that I can't complete?
Just, we're
You
done.
have 15
That's enough.
seconds.
You want to take
With lots of
15?
interruption.
You can take
Well, how about my
15.
interruption time,
You can
Mr. Mayor?
take 15, and that's it. Okay?
You're
making
begging.
it hard tonight.
You're begging.
Okay?
You're begging for a
I'm
legal
begging you.
dispute.
Okay? I'm begging you.
So be it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, does anyone else want to talk about parking on East Main? And please, let's just try to stick to parking on East Main in this one particular item. And if not, I'll close the hearing. Anyone online, Ben? Okay. Can I get a motion to close? the
There is
public
no
hearing?
one else online, Mayor.
All right. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing?
So that's Dan and
Second.
Molly, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And, let me just be clear. I bend over backwards to be tolerant, and I'll do my very best to do that as long as I possibly can, and probably longer than other people would tolerate. And I'm okay with that, but at some point. So, okay. We finished the public hearing, and we now have reports from the council. Do we want to start, I don't know, with Molly, and we'll work our way around?
I have a visual today because Justice Paloma and I got invited by the Beacon High School to participate in their career fair, and I just wanted to say what a great opportunity it was. I wanted to share the visual. I'll share it for those that don't quite see it on the video, but this basically is a sheet that we created for everyone at the high school to write down their ideas. We had a great participatory budget program that both Chris White and Paloma last year went to the high school and got their ideas, and we were able to share some of the results of the last time they did this. And so they had some great ideas, some of the things we're already thinking about, like a community center, like bike lanes, what do we want to do for that in the city, and general opportunities for the youth to get involved. And so it was a great opportunity. I really want to especially thank Michelle at the high school for helping to organize this career fair. I think there were lots of different departments in the city and around in our communities who were also able to participate. So, and that's all I have for my ward report, and I'll pass it to Justice.
As I'm sure most people are aware, the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, has sent asylum seekers to our respective communities. I recognize that immigration is a subject that evokes strong emotion in some, but when it comes to those seeking safety, we can choose whether politicized identities are a barrier to our empathy, and I know that as an individual and as an elected official, I alone do not have the resources to create safe conditions that those coming to Newburgh and Poughkeepsie need. But as a leader and as a neighbor, I refuse to lose my humanity in response to crisis. People are complex, and sometimes we're thrown into impossible situations. But I'm grateful for our county legislator, Yvette Valdez-Smith, who is speaking out against xenophobia on the county level. I am grateful for local community organizations like Beacon Climate Action Now and Celebrate 845, who are collecting donations for those seeking safety here in our communities. And I want to thank all the individuals and families that are showing up with kindness and living the resolution passed by this city just before my time on council, declaring Beacon as a welcoming, safe, and inclusive community. I want to make sure that as we continue to address these complex situations, that we don't lose our humanity while doing so. And that is, thank you for listening to me say all of that. And on a completely different note, on Wednesday, Councilmember Dan Elmore-Blair and myself will be hosting an information session at the Beacon Recreation Center for the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail for community members in Beacon, and I'll let Dan talk a little bit more on that. And on another completely different note, This year, there is going to be a Riverfront Festival in celebration of Juneteenth. So mark your calendars, Monday, June 19th. There'll be music, there'll be vendors, there'll be lots of fun. And if you know anybody that's interested in being a vendor, you can contact the organizers or reach out to me and ask for a little more information. I don't have any office hours set for the month of June, but you can visit the city's website under the city government page and book an appointment with me under the link under my name. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Hello?
I missed my first meeting ever 2 weeks ago, but that means that I'm a little bit late in my wanting to celebrate that this is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And in light of that, I'd like to share a little bit of my own history and heritage. As I've mentioned from the seat before, I am a fourth generation Japanese American. I believe I'm the first of that particular demographic to hold this seat, but maybe the Beacon Historical Society can fact check me on that. My great-grandparents came to this country from Japan in the early 20th century as farmers and fishermen, giving birth to a generation of architects and school teachers and municipal secretary. And in February of 1942, both of these generations were forced from their homes, housed in horse stalls, and then shipped to internment camps under the executive order of one of the Hudson Valley's favorite sons, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. My family eventually received reparations and a formal apology from the U.S. government for this error. But it's important to me to note that this misguided policy and xenophobia and mistreatment of immigrant groups is as much a part of America's legacy and history as the fact that we also have accomplished great and wonderful things, that we are fundamentally a nation of immigrants, built by immigrants, maintained by immigrants, and ultimately made better by the diversity of our population. I think about my family's experiences as we welcome this recent and I would say modest wave of immigrants to our neighboring towns of Newburgh and Poughkeepsie, as Justice mentioned. And I would reiterate that I am very proud that the City of Beacon ourselves have declared ourselves a welcoming, safe, and inclusive community, regardless of race, religion, gender identity or expression, national origin, nationality, preferred language, immigration status, age, disability, education, or socioeconomic status. So quite comprehensive, but I am proud of that resolution and proud that our city has declared itself as such. My office hours are this Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. I'll be across the street at Pole Hill Park and would welcome any conversation on this or any other topic. And would also reiterate my thanks to all of the staff at Beacon High School for including us in their career day. Thanks.
Thank you. Dan?
Thanks. I just want to thank everyone who came to office hours yesterday at Trax. Really appreciate the conversations we had, and I was out inviting neighbors to this event on Wednesday about the Fjord Trail down by Sargent School, South Avenue, and Slocum, and just talking to folks about what's going on and inviting them to the session. And I learned a lot from y'all, and just really great to catch up with neighbors new and old. I will not be having office hours next month. I will be traveling around Father's Day and Juneteenth, and won't be able to take part in some of the events that week, and will not be able to attend the City Council meeting on the 20th. Justice mentioned the Hudson Highland Fjord Trail meeting that we're having on Wednesday at 7 o'clock. I'm really excited for it. We're going to get a 45-minute presentation on what the trail is, how it links to Beacon, how it links to other trails, some of the public amenities. The Fjord Trail planners will also be soliciting feedback. They're looking for ideas about educational opportunities, other amenities, and other kinds of services and goods that could be associated with the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail that mean a lot to Beacon. I think it's going to be a great event. There will be plenty of time for you to get your questions answered, and you can raise your concerns. And so that's Wednesday, 7 p.m. for about a 90-minute meeting, and it'll be at the Rec Center gym. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Just a couple of things. One, I had the opportunity to just do a small welcoming ceremony for the backboards at the South Avenue basketball courts. We put a new backboards that was connected to the prop that Molly brought. And while I was there, congratulating the person who came up with the idea and his family, I got hailed over to the tennis courts by none other than Charlie Kelly and his tennis mates, who reminded me about the need for the tennis courts improvement. I didn't say anything. I haven't spoken to anyone, but it's in our forward plan. So that was always a good thing. On Sunday, I attended a memorial service for Reiko Lemon. Reiko was born in Japan, in fact, on the western side of Honshu, and came to the States because her husband was translating and teaching English in Japan. And the Lemon family raised 3 sons and spent, 40 years, more than 40 years in Beacon. They were one of the first families I got to know here in Beacon, and they were always very, very welcoming to me. They were one of the few Japanese Americans here that long ago, and it was a really very moving memorial service at the Howland Center. So I just want to pass that along. I saw a number of people who I've known quite some time and who obviously have known the Lemons for quite some time. I also attended the Beacon Historical Society, their opening of the Great Estates exhibit. As you know, Denise Van Buren was here last week talking to us about the 1913 incorporation of the city, and once she came and told me I had to go, I didn't have a choice. As you know, Denise is a force of nature. So it was actually quite a nice and very informative display, and if you haven't been over to the Historical Society, I would encourage you to go there. Finally, I'll mention assessments. Someone spoke about them. There is a video on the television and on our website that you can pick up about your assessments. You get a letter every year because Beacon does full value assessing every year. We've done that for 20 full years, and any reference to not having done one for a long time is misplaced. It could be related to the fact that values weren't rising for a time. In fact, they were declining for a little period of time. But the way that assessments work in Beacon, and in actually 19 or 18 of the 20-some communities in the county, is that every community stays up to date every year and does the same process we do. Fishkill does the same thing, so does Wappingers. And that means that they attempt to update the assessments close to market value. They don't quite get there, but they get close. It's also in arrears, and so for instance, the session that's occurring this week that you can grieve your assessment on was for the period of a year ending July of 2022. And that period ending July of 22 will be the assessments used for assessing taxes starting in the fall, which is the school district tax, and then the municipal county tax after that. So it's always a little bit in arrears too, which sometimes can confuse people because you know, things start to decline and you still see an increase because it's from a year ago, or things are starting to go up and you still see a decrease from a year ago. So just be aware of that. Be aware that the community does its best to, they don't look at every single property, they look at classes of property. I got the same letter that everyone else gets as a property owner. My home went up exactly 10%, and at the bottom of the letter was a little note that says, by the way, the average increase on residential properties this year was 10%. And so I can look at that and recognize that I'm not getting a higher share of the property tax bill because my home appreciated at the same value as the others on average. Right? Had my home appreciated at a greater than 10% rate, I would be taking a slightly larger share of taxes, which would increase my bill. Had my home increased less than 10%, I'd be getting a break. Okay, so that's how to kind of perceive and get a sense of what it means when you get your letter and the number's up. There'll be years where your number's down, but, you know, we're benefiting from the numbers being up. Just because your assessment is up doesn't mean you get any higher taxes. What will establish your tax, assuming that your home went up at that 10% rate, is what this council does. This council sets the tax levy. The levy is the total tax bill for the city. Ours is about $12 million. Last year, we raised it less than 2%, which reflected only the new construction that was made in the city, and that meant that the tax increase for existing homes was 0 last year, on average. That doesn't mean they were all that way, and there was this interesting little problem of homestead versus non-homestead, which is far too complex to try to explain to folks. But we bank the opportunity to raise it at a higher rate and still stay under the state cap. The state sets a cap based on the Consumer Price Index, and we were well below that this year. And even though we're still funding a brand new firehouse, and we're finding out how to do it. So I just want to pass on that if you have a grievance, this is the time to do it. I think Dan mentioned and others confirmed that on Wednesday from 2 to 4 and at 6 to 8 is your opportunity to grieve your taxes. I believe the meeting is downstairs in the classroom. Chris, would you confirm that, or where do you go if you want to grieve your taxes?
You would go to downstairs at the building department entrance,
Okay.
and they'll meet in the
All
back.
right, so it's in the lower level in the classroom. And if you aren't sure about whether to grieve, and someone sort of suggested this in the public comments, you can go on the Dutchess County website to a part called Parcel Access. You can look up your home and see what the assessment is, including its dimensions and other characteristics. You can do that with every home in your neighborhood. And that should give you a sense of whether you think it's in the ballpark or whether it's off. You always have the right to grieve. We get very, very few suits because we stay at full value. Staying at full value helps those who don't have the means to challenge their assessments every year, and there are certainly those who have the means to do so. By staying at full value, we make it fair for everyone, including those who don't have the wherewithal to challenge. So I just wanted to pass that along. And I'll give it to you, Chris.
We have launched bulk garbage drop-off again. This last Saturday, we started a program that will run through the third Saturday of September, where residents who have paid their taxes on their parcels can come down and drop off up to 250 pounds of bulk garbage, including furniture, construction debris, and other household items. We don't accept hazardous waste or electronic waste at this time. There's been some talk about the resolutions that are coming up for the firehouse. I want to make a couple things clear. Firstly, this firehouse is not just an addition. We are gut renovating the existing firehouse, which is at the end of its useful life, and that's located directly across the street. We are also consolidating from 2 firehouses, previously 3 firehouses, into this one, which will give us a lot of operational improvements. This has been studied since 2006. Unbelievably, we did bid all of these contracts. We actually do comply with state law and put things out to bid. So whatever you've heard tonight here, please be assured that every one of the contracts that you're approving that was requiring a bid went out to bid. That's all I have.
Chris, I had a quick question if you'll entertain it. Is there a date for the citywide yard sale yet?
Yes.
June 10th.
June?
It's the second Saturday of June.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's the citywide yard sale. And you can go to our website, and there's a little button if you want to sign up and register. You don't have to register, but if you want your yard sale promoted with the rest of them, please do sign up. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a long list of resolutions, so let's get started. The first one is appointing Jennifer McGuire to the position of account clerk typist. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
So Molly and Justice. Chris, you want to tell us a little bit about Jennifer?
Jennifer is a Beacon resident and had a bookkeeping business. We interviewed her and several other candidates, and she was our definite top pick. This is to replace the person who works at our front window, who mostly accepts tax payments, water payments, and generally deals with the public. It kind of is the first line.
Any comments, questions?
I'll just say, as I said about lots of other recent appointments, that it's great to see that Jennifer brings lots of skills, like her tax expertise and professionalism, and as we think about the future of our city, I'm excited to see where her and our other staff members kind of evolve in their careers from here.
Okay. Not hearing any other comments. All in favor of appointing Jennifer McGuire to the position of account clerk typist, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. The next one is appointing Amanda Caputo as temporary city clerk, which is different than the title that she was given temporarily before. Can I get a motion and a second on that?
Motion.
Explain.
Second.
So that was Justice and Dan, and Chris or Nick, will you just explain what we're doing?
Nick, I'm going to give you this one.
All right.
Thank you. So, Mayor and Council, the position of city clerk is currently vacant. So, under the law, the city has the ability, when there's an emergency and need to fill such position, to do so for a temporary time. And in this case, the Office of City Clerk provides a number of important processes, including issuance of death certificates, marriage licenses, and birth certificates. So that justifies the need for appointing an individual to fill the vacant slot while the city goes through the process of searching for a permanent hire. So previously, Ms. Caputo was appointed to the position of, sorry because I'm drawing blank, the registrar, temporary registrar, which is limited just to birth and death certificates. City clerk has more power, so Ms. Caputo would be appointed as a temporary city clerk and fulfill that position on a temporary basis until such time as a full-time clerk is appointed.
And Amanda was previously our deputy clerk, so she's very well prepared for this, and just filling in and helping us out.
So does her previous temporary position naturally sunset if we were to approve this one?
In the resolution, it says that she resigns from registrar.
Oh, great.
And that she is now clerk, and that was to avoid a duplication.
Great, thank you.
But I think your question about when we hire a clerk, or when was your question about the registrar versus the temporary clerk?
It was more the latter, but I'm also curious about the pathway for hiring a city clerk.
So we have interviews later this week, and I'm hoping to bring you a candidate by the June 5th meeting.
Okay. Any other comments? So all in favor of appointing Amanda?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I was just corrected. We didn't change language about resignation because Amanda resigned as the registrar so that we had a clear path on the clerk. We went back and forth, and I'm corrected. Thank you, Ben.
And we don't need city resolutions when people resign. So.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. All in favor of appointing Amanda Caputo as temporary city clerk, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. So now we have a series of contracts to approve, all bid, I believe. The first one is awarding a general construction contract for the addition and renovation of Beacon Fire Station project. Can I get a motion and a second for that?
Motion.
Second.
So that was Dan and Justice, and again, this is the general construction contract. Chris, you want to take us through this first one?
So this is the largest of the 7 primes for the project. As you know, under New York state law, there are multiple primes for the GC, plumbing, electric, mechanical. We actually broke this project down into 7 primes so that we could do what we needed to do under Wick's law, and we also put in primes for the fire sprinkler, which is a very specialized service, and also the geothermal wells, so that again, a specialized service that most of the GCs would have just, or the site work contractors would have subcontracted with and then added some margin for profit and overhead. This contract is worth $6,887,000, and it's with the low bidder, Mid-Hudson Construction Management. And they will oversee The GC is basically the coordinator of the project along with our construction manager.
Chris, there's a statement in all of the resolutions authorizing you to have the power to increase contracts up to $50,000, and I wasn't sure if that was each of the 7 contracts up to $50,000 or collectively they couldn't go up to $50,000.
Nick, I think that's each, correct?
That is correct, Chris. It is each of the contracts, yes. With the consent and information of the Director of Finance.
So we do have contingency in the project. We also have allowances in each of the contracts, so we hope not to have to use the contingency.
So that's sort of the $400,000 contingency we've talked about previously, I think at our last workshop.
We put in a contingency of $250,000 on top of the allowances. And each of the allowances is in the resolution that you have. I think the $400,000, it depends on the contract, how much we put into each. I don't have that in front of me, I'm sorry. But it is in the resolution. It will say this, for this amount with this allowance.
You might have already been planning to do this. I think in general, I'm fine with this. I think it would be great especially as there are changes in costs, if you could continue to keep us abreast on where things
Absolutely.
Stand in total. That would be great for us and for the public, because, as is pointed out, this is not a small project.
Right. We're just looking at things like if we have something that comes up unexpectedly, like we're doing rock removal and there's a lot more rock removal and we don't have a meeting for a week, this gives me the ability to do a quick change order so that we can continue the project progress. And again, I'll report anything over the contracts.
Any other comments on the first one? Okay, so this is on awarding a general construction contract on the order of what amount, Chris?
$6,887,000.
For the addition and renovations of the fire station project. So this is the main contract. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? And Nick, I'm confirming we don't have to do roll call votes, right?
Right.
Thank you. All right, second one is a mechanical contract in connection with the Beacon Fire Station. Can we get a motion and a second on that? And Chris will explain the mechanical.
Motion.
Second.
So Dan and Molly. And Chris, tell us what this one's about and the amount.
So mechanical is just another term for the HVAC. And this contractor, the low bidder was MDS HVAC R Inc. With a value of $1,427,101.
Any questions on this one? All right, so all in favor of awarding the mechanical contract for addition and renovation of the Beacon Fire Station project, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, so the next one is the plumbing contract. I need a motion and a second to award the plumbing contract on the fire station project.
Motion.
Second.
So that was Justice and Molly. And Chris, this one is for S&O Construction?
S&O Construction Services was the low bidder with a bid of $758,451.
And that was the low bid?
Yes. And we had 5, I forgot to mention, we had 5 bids on plumbing, we had 5 bids on mechanical, and we had 7 bids on general contractor. So as I go through, I'll give you the number of bids too. So we did have a robust response on this, thanks in part to the construction manager really shopping this job out.
I just want to say I appreciate you going through this in detail last week with us and answering all of our questions. Then I don't have any questions right now.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor of awarding the plumbing contract to S&O Construction Services for the fire station project for a base bid of $758,000. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, the fourth one is I'm looking for a motion and a second on the electrical contract, and that's for RLJ Electric Corporation, and of the amount of $1.1 million. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second?
So that's Dan and Paloma, and Chris, you'll give us any details?
We had 4 bids received on this, and RLJ Electric was the low bidder at $1,123,000.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the electrical contract? Hearing none, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? The fifth one is awarding a fire sprinkler contract, and if I get a motion and a second, Chris will tell us who that is, the amount, and how many bids he got.
Motion.
Second.
So that was Justice and Molly.
We had 1 bid on this, and this again was specialized work that there's really one entity in the region that does the work. So rather than have them give a price to the plumbing or the general, and they add 30%, we just bid this. So the low bid, their only bid was $189, and that was well within the engineer's estimate as well. So it wasn't unexpectedly high or off.
All right. Any comments on this one? So I'll take all those in favor of awarding the fire sprinkler contract to SRI Fire Sprinklers, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Number 6, we've got a geothermal contract, right? So this is a motion, I'm looking for a motion and a second to award the geothermal contract to, Dan
Second?
and Paloma, and that would be awarded to Connecticut Wells Geothermal Services, Inc. Chris, will you tell us the amount and the bids?
Yes, so Connecticut Wells was the low bidder of 2 bids. They came in at $435,000. Again, for reference, our engineer's estimate was $425,000. So it was almost dead on. And they are the entity that did the test wells that you see on the north side of the property where we were trying, on the south side of the property where we're trying to ascertain the depth that we could go with these geothermal wells. We're going to have a series of, I think, 14 wells that are going to provide geothermal heat and cooling to the building, which is all electric, as you know.
Any other comments? All those in favor of awarding the geothermal contract to Connecticut Wells Geothermal Services, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the 7th one, I'm looking for a motion and a second awarding site work on the fire station.
Motion.
Second.
So that was Molly and Justice. And Chris, you tell us who it is and the amount?
Yes, so this is a familiar name, Mid-Hudson Construction Management, which also got the GC. They were the low bidder on both of those packages, and they came in at $1,514,000 for the site work. Having the same contractor do both of those, we view as a very positive thing as well, because the coordination between those two segments of this contract are important. We had 3 bids for that.
I have a very particular question. In the actual resolution, now therefore be it resolved, it says in a fee allowance for rock excavation of 1,000 CY. What's CY?
Cubic yards.
Cubic yards, thank you.
So when we, on the north end of the property, we have, there's basically a hillside. Think of it as a triangle. And we have to cut that triangle out to have a base on which to build the addition that's flat. So we've done our best to estimate what the rock is there, and we've basically put an allowance in for a certain amount of rock. If there's less rock, we get money back, and if there's more rock, we have to pay more. And that price is the same, and that's purposeful. That way they didn't give us an extraordinarily high price because they know they could actually lose if they had less rock than we think is there. So you'll see the test wells that we dug on that side of the property, and that's why we closed that parking lot, because we don't have the most stable parking lot there right now.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, one more. Does site work include landscaping, or is that a separate thing?
No, site work does include landscaping.
It does include it.
And will include the replanting of all the trees that were cut on Wolcott Avenue. We'll be replacing the trees one for one with large caliper trees that are, they don't look like they're going to take 5 years to get above your knee.
Let's make a plug for native trees, please.
I think they are. I think they're all red maples.
Oh, great.
And maybe with some pin oaks.
Okay.
I'm forgetting. We just did red maples in the park, too. So we have been, other than on Main Street, we're trying to plant native trees.
Great.
The ones on Main Street, we often use hybrids because they get a little bit more stress.
Yeah.
Salt.
And they fit better, too.
They do. And then the hybrid, some of the hybrids also are designed so they don't rip up infrastructure.
I think Karen Cleana would want me to mention that not just red oaks. There are other native trees, and we want more than one type of tree in locations.
Yes. Very good.
Shagbark hickory for the Indiana bat.
All right, I'll put it on Mark's list.
So this is on the site contract work. I believe we're ready to vote, so all in favor of awarding the site contract work as described, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? That's the entire page, but then there is one more. So there's this is authorizing the city administrator to execute. So we're not awarding a contract, we're authorizing the city administrator to execute an agreement with Tectonic Engineering Consultants, geologists and land surveyors, DPC, which I don't know what it stands for special inspection material testing services in connection with the fire station project. So can I get a motion and a second on authorizing the city administrator for that?
Motion.
Second.
So I'll do Molly and Justice. And Chris, you will tell us what this is for.
Yes, and a DPC is a domestic professional corporation.
Thank you.
This is for independent testing of materials, so when we have concrete that's installed, they will be on site taking cores, making sure that that concrete meets all of the specifications of the architect. And due to the value of this, it did not need to go to bid, but we did get 4 cost proposals, and they were the lowest of the 4, and also one of the easiest to work with in terms of showing up on time and being there when we need them. So our construction manager has worked with Tectonic before and had no hesitation in recommending their this contract.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this one? And again, this is on authorizing the city administrator to execute an agreement with Tectonic Engineering with a bunch of other words after that in their name. And so all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. The next one is a motion to set a public hearing for a proposed local law. Oh, by the way, thank you all in the back for your appearance. Yeah, it's a little bit higher than where we originally thought. I think it was when we bonded, we were looking at 10, but when we hired the consultants that were actually going to do the hard work, they came back with estimates, and the bids were about 5% over those estimates.
No.
Oh, it was 13.7, wasn't it?
No.
What was their last one? Okay. I won't go there. He's telling me not to.
I mean, you're just
so
not correct.
So we're thrilled to be able to authorize these, and I hope you can last until it's done. So thank you.
And we're going to blame it all on Gary anyway, so that our new chief comes in and. But thank you. The fire service has been extraordinarily flexible in the living conditions. We've had them over. Half of our folks over at a trailer at DPW. They're working at a maze during the day, and we really appreciate the flexibility and look forward to having you housed in a real building again that has room for everybody. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So let's go back to the one-way street. So this is a motion to set a public hearing on a temporary conversion of South Avenue to a one-way street in connection with the fire station rebuild. Can I get a motion and a second to set the public hearing for
I think
June
it's
12th.
June 12th.
June 12th?
That's our next meeting.
Thank you. I need a
Motion.
motion. So it was Paloma and
Second,
Justice?
yeah.
Okay. Any comments? I have one. So South Avenue was the former Route 9D before they built the arterial. And I just was thinking when we were discussing this possibility, and I talked about it with the highway department head, seems to me that it was left two-way because of its original position as Route 9D, possibly also to assist with the firehouse engines exiting. The other thing that we did was, I think all of the other streets that predate me were made one-way, either alternately, either coming into or leaving from Main Street on both sides of the street. And the only change we made to that pattern was we reversed the direction of North Cedar to match the direction of Mattawan and people walking to the high school in the morning. Commerce Street, interestingly, it doesn't fit that pattern and is one way away from Main Street. I have a sneaky feeling when we're done with having South Avenue be one way away from Main Street, so that would mean we'd have two in a row on the south side of Main heading away from Main Street, that we may want to reverse the direction of Commerce Street when we consider this again. In the meantime, I think it makes sense that we have one way away from Main Street, meaning southbound on South Avenue. But I would ask that we would consider both of those streets when this expires. And that was my only comment.
I also actually had a question around Commerce Street, since it is a one-way.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant Cliff.
Cliff,
Yeah.
okay, Cliff.
Right?
Yes, no, that goes away from Main Street. You're
Yes.
right, you're
Yeah,
right.
I blew it.
No, but I had a question about Commerce Street specifically, because that one is a one-way that leads into South Avenue.
That's right.
And I know some people turn the other direction to get out and head north. So it would be a minor inconvenience to folks, but has there been any consideration about temporarily making Commerce Street a two-way?
Well, so this would be setting a public hearing. We're not obliged to, do it, though it depends on the comments from the public. My 2 cents was to do the minimum at first, but and then this is my request to Mickey, was just take a look overall, because that might be another change. I think Commerce and Cliff were set one way to preclude people from finding ways to make a left heading northbound from South Avenue, because they precluded the left turn onto Main Street. And then it's like, okay, so to make sure you didn't try to use Commerce and then Cliff, well, we'll make those one way as well.
Yeah.
So that logic may change when we think about it all again. We might want to leave South Avenue one way, or we might undo it, but I just would ask us to look comprehensively, or ask the committee, the Traffic Safety Committee, to kind of look overall, including Commerce Street. I think it makes sense.
Do you know, is there going to be an opportunity for the Traffic Safety Committee to review this before the public hearing?
Yes.
They will do that, yeah. Is there thought to stripe the actual parking spaces as
Yes.
part of this?
Yeah, the goal of this one-way was to add parking where we're taking away parking on the other side. So the parking lot that's to the south of our building is going to be closed, because that's where we're drilling geothermal wells. Then we're going to come back and use it as a staging area where you'll have all of our equipment, the supplies, people that are working there will park. So the idea was to try to pick up, and we approximated about 50 parking spaces that we could pick up on South Avenue, because you're doing two things with the proposed law. One is you're making it one way so that you can just have one lane of traffic. The other is you're allowing parking. There's actually no parking allowed on South Avenue right now, even though that's not well enforced. So we would stripe it with the parking stalls, and then we can evaluate how it works and see if we want to make it permanent or we want to make it go back to the other way.
It's great that the Parking and Traffic Safety Committee is taking a look. I had some question about, I assume that we still want emergency vehicles or at least ambulances to have access through that street, and I was like, ooh, if you had 2 cars parked on either side at certain points, would they fit? But I trust their judgment on whether or not it would fit. I'm also wondering, assuming this passes, if we could also, again, maybe recommend to the Parking Traffic Safety Committee a one-way street across from the parking lot behind Bank Square, because people are going to pull out of that parking lot and they're going to make that right. So it's a bit like the parking lot that's behind on Cliff Street, that's behind Hudson Beach Glass, that I think there's a one-way arrow there because we've learned that that's helpful for people who don't know this community, especially if they're parking there and then they just turn back to the main street because that would make sense to them. So I think that might be something to also take a look at because that might be a bit blind as well, so you could end up with people having accidents there.
It's a good suggestion.
So Ben attends the, go ahead.
Sorry, no, yeah, that's why I also think that plays into just like maybe having Commerce and Cliff be sort of a loop around for that if this, we make South Avenue a one-way, but just a thought, we're figuring things out, and I appreciate your insight.
So I think our input has been heard by Ben, who attends the meetings.
Yes.
So, anything else on this one?
I am just a little curious about signage that would potentially go up at the intersection of Beacon Street and South Avenue, especially going west down Beacon Street, because I'm just worried that since that's where it ends, the one-way, right?
Yes.
I guess I don't.
So it'd be no right turn.
No right turn, okay.
And then there would be a do not enter sign at the entranceway as well. So coming westward, you'd have no right turn. Coming eastward, you'd have no left turn. We're going to have Mickey go and do a comprehensive look on all the signs we need to have.
Great.
Awesome.
Okay. So this is for setting a public hearing for this signage change. All in favor of setting the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. So we have 2 additions, both are resolutions. One is a home rule request. So this would be a resolution requesting the enactment of an Assembly and State Senate bill which would authorize the City of Beacon to impose a hotel-motel tax in the city. And to do that, we need to make what's called home rule request, which is what this resolution is. Can I get a motion and a second for that resolution?
Motion.
So that's Molly and Paloma. I don't think I need to read it in its totality. Nick, will you just explain what it's doing?
Certainly, Mayor. So when a special local piece of legislation is adopted, meaning it's unique just to the municipality, the rules of the Constitution and also the New York State legislative body require that there be a request from the municipality requesting that New York State impose a specific rule that only pertains to the municipality. So it's called a local home rule request. So in this case, the City of Beacon is requesting that the legislation that is being introduced by Assembly Member Jacobson and Senator Rollison that would authorize a local hotel and motel tax in an amount not to exceed 5%, that be adopted by the Senate and Assembly and signed by the governor at the request of the City of Beacon. I would also note that although it's called a hotel and motel tax, it applies into all accommodations, including B&Bs and short-term rentals. And if adopted by New York State, it would then authorize the city at a later point in time to adopt its own hotel tax via a local law.
Sorry, this is a hotel, was there a discussion about this that I missed last month? No? This is the first time we're talking about it?
Yeah. The only reason we're putting it forward quickly is just because the Assembly and Senate are in session,
Sure.
and we were informed that we needed a home rule resolution. We should have been informed earlier, but we weren't.
Okay, so what is, since this sounds like a decision you made to contact them and ask for home rule?
It was the other way around.
It was the other way around.
They came to us?
Yes.
Can you explain that?
In a number of municipalities throughout the Hudson Valley that they have their own accommodations tax. So there was one introduced for Newburgh, I believe, last session, so I believe it was then thought appropriate to offer this. The city is not obligated to do so, it just gives you the authority to do so should you wish to enact it. To enact it would require adopting a local law after a public hearing imposing the tax. So you're not obligated to impose the tax, it just gives you the option to do so.
And this is in addition to the county tax?
Yes.
And the state tax,
Instead
yes.
of, okay. And we choose the percentage?
Not to exceed 5%, but
Not
you
to
choose
exceed
a
5%.
percentage below 5%.
Thanks.
Yes.
So we just had this, but just to say clearly, we do not currently have a Beacon-specific hotel tax, but we need this resolution to get the home rule, which gives us the option to decide if we want to have one.
That is correct.
Okay, great.
Yeah, this was suggested to us by our assemblyman, and we talked orally about the opportunity, and the assemblyman offered up the bill, and our state senator put it into the Senate, and then at some point someone realized we needed a home rule resolution. And so about halfway through the process, someone contacted us and said, we need a home rule resolution. So that's
By next week.
Yeah. And that was, we were contacted on Thursday or something,
Yeah.
right? So. I will note a couple of things. In the all caps at the very top, and the second line, the last word should be enactment. And then in the third line, the New York State Senate should have one fewer T's than it does. But the rest seemed okay.
Great, we will make those corrections. Apologies.
Yep.
And in the first whereas, I think it says the purpose of this proposed legislation as opposed to the purpose of this proposed legislation.
We will delete the D.
I think the request from the council is just to do a good spell check.
Yes,
And
we'll do so.
Thank
Apologies.
you for putting this together on extremely short notice. Okay. Anything else on this one? All right, so all in favor of adopting a resolution requesting home rule for the enactment and adoption of a hotel and motel tax in the city of Beacon, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you very much. And then the last item is also a resolution that was put on at the last, in the last couple of days, and I hope that's okay with council. And that one is a resolution urging the state legislature to adopt an Assembly Bill 7208 and a Senate Bill 6893 to make unlawful the discharge of radiological substances into the Hudson River in connection with the decommissioning of a nuclear power plant. And so if I can get a motion and a second, we can have someone take us through this.
Motion, second.
So Paloma and Molly, and I'm happy to read it. It's in its entirety since it's new. So let me just do that real quick. It's not very long. Whereas the Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant is located in Buchanan, New York, which is approximately 17 miles south of the city of Beacon, and whereas the Hudson River is a tidal river and water from Buchanan flows to the city of Beacon, and whereas the company decommissioning the Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant has announced its intention to release contaminated water from its on-site radioactive fuel waste pools into the Hudson River, and whereas on April 10th, 2023, the City of Beacon City Council passed a resolution in opposition to the discharge of contaminated water into the Hudson River and in support of a ban on the release of any radiological agents into the waters of New York. And whereas State Assembly Member Levenberg and Senator Harcum have sponsored Assembly Bill 7208 and Senate Bill 6893 respectively, which makes it unlawful to discharge any radiological substance into the Hudson River in connection with the decommissioning of a nuclear power plant and subjects violators to a civil penalty. Now therefore be it resolved that the City of Beacon urges the state legislature to pass such bills and that Governor Hochul sign the legislation once adopted, and be it further resolved that this be directed a certified copy to the governor, our state senator, Senator Harcum, Assembly Member Jacobson, Assembly Member Levenberg, the New York State Public Service Commission, the New York State DEC, and the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. That's in its entirety. And again, apologize for the last minute, but again, the legislature's in session, and we thought this was something that made sense to do on an expedited basis.
And the sponsors reached out to us to ask for us to do that, and then we would copy them on your resolution tomorrow if you pass it.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand the difference between these particular laws and the one that we already passed a resolution in support of, and it seems that these new ones are just a little more fleshed out and a little more comprehensive. Both have the same co-sponsors. It's one of the oddities of how the New York State Legislature works, I guess.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments? So all in favor of adopting this resolution and sending copies to the relevant parties mentioned, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. 2 items to approve. One are the special meeting minutes of May 1st, and then the second are the regular minutes of May 8th. Can I get a motion and a second on both together unless I am vetoed by my city attorney? Hearing none, I'll take that motion and second.
Motion.
That's Molly.
Second.
And Dan. Any questions, comments? The special meeting minutes of May 1st are extremely short. Even I could read those. Anything on May 1 or May 8th? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. So we're at our second opportunity for public comments. If you have not made a comment in the first opportunity and would like to make a comment at this time, you may do so. I don't see anyone in the public audience who qualifies on that front. And Ben, do you have anyone in the virtual audience who'd like to make a comment who did not do so?
There are no hands raised online.
I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Dan and Paloma, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. And I'll just note there's no meeting next week for those who
That's
weren't
right.
aware.
So
yeah.
when we did the calendar, we knew that the 5th Monday was going to be Memorial Day. So we planned our 4 meetings earlier in the month. Our next meeting will be a workshop on Monday, June 5th, and then a voting meeting on Monday, June 12th.
Thanks for confirming.
Thank you all and good night.
The 20th is a workshop, right?
Record.